Welcome to Living Life. Today we come to a recounting of David's mighty men.
Second Samuel chapter 23, verses 13 to 39. During harvest time, 3 of the 30 chief warriors came down to David at the cave of Adullam, while a band of Philistines was encamped in the valley of Rephaim. At that time, David was in the stronghold, and the Philistine garrison was at Bethlehem. David longed for water and said, "Oh, that someone would get me a drink of water from the well near the gate of Bethlehem." So the 3 mighty warriors broke down the Philistine lines, drew water from the well near the gate of Bethlehem, and carried it back to David. But he refused to drink it. Instead, he poured it out before the Lord. "Far be it from me, Lord, to do this," he said. "Is it not the blood of men who went at the risk of their lives?" And David would not drink it. Such were the exploits of the 3 mighty warriors. Abishai, the brother of Joab, son of Zeruiah, was chief of the 3. He raised his spear against 300 men whom he killed, and so he became as famous as the 3. Was he not held in greater honor than the 3? He became their commander, even though he was not included among them. Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, a valiant fighter from Kabzeel, performed great exploits. He struck down Moab's 2 mightiest warriors. He also went down into a pit on a snowy day and killed a lion. And he struck down a huge Egyptian. Although the Egyptian had a spear in his hand, Benaiah went against him with a club. He scratched the spear from the Egyptian's hand and killed him with his own spear. Such were the exploits of Benaiah, son of Jehoiada. He too was as famous as the 3 mighty warriors. He was held in greater honor than any of the 30, but he was not included among the 3. And David put him in charge of his bodyguard. Among the 30 were Asahel, the brother of Joab, Elhanan, son of Dodo from Bethlehem, Shema the Harodite, Elika the Harodite, Helez the Paltite, Ira, son of Ikesh from Tekoa, Abiezer from Anathoth, Sibbecai the Hushathite, Zalman the Ahohite, Maharai the Netophathite, Heled, son of Baana the Netophathite, Ithai, son of Ribai from Gibeah in Benjamin, Benaiah the Pirathonite, Hiddai from the ravines of Gash, Abi Albon the Arbathite, Asmaveth the Barhumite, Eliaba the Shalbonite, the sons of Jashin, Jonathan, son of Shammah the Hararite, Ahiam, son of Sharar the Hararite, Eliphalet, son of Abishai the Maachathite, Eliam, son of Ahithophel the Gilonite, Hezro the Carmelite, Peirai the Arbite, Igal, son of Nathan from Zobah, the son of Hagri, Zelek the Ammonite, Naharai the Beerothite, the armor-bearer of Joab, son of Zeruiah, Ira the Ithrite, Gareb the Ithrite, and Uriah the Hittite. There were 37 in all.
I'll first outline the passage and then offer some more general comments. The first set of verses 8 through 12, is a brief summary of the heroic exploits of 3 of these mighty men, Ishbaal, Eleazar, and Shammah. They may have been acknowledged as champions of a single combat, or they more probably belonged to a special group within the overall group of 30. Now, the so-called 30 of David's mighty men might have been a designation of a military unit, which usually included picked warriors. One of them, Ishbaal, is depicted as having slain 800 men. But it is more plausible that this was achieved with the help of the troop under his command. But again, in verse 10, we see that the Lord is given credit in bringing about a great victory that day. The second section, verses 13 through 17, describes the foolhardy act of devotion by 3 nameless warriors from among the 30. Their loyalty and devotion to the king in garnering water shows they were quite prepared to indulge even his whims. David is fully appreciative of their heroism, but pours out the water as a libation to Yahweh and emphasizes that only Yahweh is fit to receive such a costly offering. The third section, verses 18 through 23, deals with the deeds of Abishai and Benaiah. Here we read in verse 20 that Benaiah has even killed a lion in a pit on a day that snow had fallen. The Hebrew here, though, is actually unclear, and perhaps we are looking at a term for a distinguished warrior instead of an actual lion. The fourth section, verses 24 to 39, provides us with an explicit list of the 30. These verses serve to honor the heroes of the past and to stress their loyalty and devotion to King David. To have the devotion of such men is also an indirect tribute to David himself. The roster, interestingly, ends with Uriah the Hittite, and this may be either a mere accidental occurrence or a veiled reminder that even David was human. We remember that David had Uriah killed in his pursuit of Uriah's wife, Bathsheba. Now, certainly theologically, the main point to consider here is the role of military conquests in support of David and also in support of God's covenantal loyalty to Israel. This was a different time and different era, one that involved killing and battle, as the small tribe of Israel became a kingdom under Saul first and then David. This passage is meant to show us that God supported God's people. And it reads like something out of The Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones, as David the Conqueror is also David the King. But we must ask ourselves, what is our perspective regarding military service? Now, certainly in some of our cultures, military service is compulsory and we have to do it. But in others, it is voluntary. It is acceptable to join the military to serve as a career. But in my opinion, it is also acceptable to not join the military if given the option to do so. In America, we have the option of rejecting combat roles through the idea of being what we call a conscientious objector. Each of us must do what we feel God is calling us to do in this realm. We also certainly do want to honor those who have sacrificed for our freedom or our safety. In my own church, we have a memorial for those who sacrificed their lives in military service. This sacrifice can be physical, an injury or a loss of a limb or even death. But it can also be emotional and psychological. Those who have participated in warfare are often haunted and damaged by the trauma they experienced. And we need to do what we can to support them. But if we step back further from this, we must ask the question, is war worth it? Are the lost and broken lives worth it? Without getting into debates about specific military actions, what is our attitude toward war and killing via the state and government? A few months ago, I spoke about just war theory and how we as Christians should have very clear and convincing moral reasons for participating in warfare. Now, a list like the one we come upon today could stir us toward valor and heroism, but it should never stir us to war unnecessarily. Jesus said in the New Testament, "Blessed are the peacemakers," and peace ought to be our goal as followers of Christ. As we think about heroism and valor, another point to be made here is that while all of these people mentioned were men, it is true that everyone, both men and women, young and old, can be heroic. Sacrificing for others was, in fact, the very essence of Jesus' ministry, as one who came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many, the scriptures say. Our call as Christians is not mainly to serve the state with heroism, but to love heroically in all of our lives, to give of ourselves to others in service to God's call. Where is God pointing you to be able to show heroic love? It could be a friend or a family member or someone in your community. Unless we get distracted by the word heroism, love consists of small, often unnoticed acts that don't get remembered in a memorial. These unseen moments of love and dignity are what the reign of Christ is built on. In fact, Jesus said, "Whatever you do to the least of these, you do it to me." I, for one, would be happy if my legacy was in being one of Jesus' mighty men or women. If you would too, remember that you might not get a statue or be memorialized in a book, but you'll know that God recognizes you and your heart and work. That's the kind of heroism and valor that we all should be interested in. And may God give us the strength to make it so.